Hi, everyone. This is your host, Sharlee Dixon, and I'm thrilled to share some exciting news about the upcoming Triad Mental Health Summit Week, happening online from August 20th to the 22nd. This is a free event, and each day will focus on a unique theme: positive change and equality on the 20th, simplifying the pathway to licensure on the 21st, and elevating therapeutic skills on the 22nd. Whether you join us for one day or all three, you'll gain practical knowledge and strategies to enhance your professional growth. Dr. Graham Taylor and I will be hosting live interviews with time at the end to answer your questions. Don't miss out on this amazing opportunity. Visit triadhq.com/TMHS to learn more and register. I can't wait to see you there.
Welcome to Behavioral Health Today, a podcast brought to you by the Triad Network. This podcast is designed to share trending topics occurring within the world and our communities and bring them a behavioral and mental health perspective.
Welcome to the Behavioral Health Today, a Triad production. I'm your host, Sharlee Dixon. My guest today is Jade Teta. Jade is a seasoned professional with over 25 years of experience in health and wellness. With a degree in biochemistry and a practice in naturopathic medicine, Jade specializes in integrative endocrinology, focusing on hormones and metabolism. His approach integrates conventional and alternative methods, prioritizing lifestyle changes and natural approaches. Beyond his medical practice, Jade is deeply engaged in psychology and philosophy, currently pursuing a PhD in transpersonal and integral psychology. Drawing from his personal journey of betrayal, loss, and transformation, Jade shares his expertise through writing, blogging, and podcasting, emphasizing relationships, romance, and personal development. As an author and educator, he dedicates himself to teaching others through books and online resources, promoting holistic well-being in mind, muscle, and metabolism. Through his online community, Jade fosters connection and collaboration, guiding individuals on a journey of growth and self-discovery with authenticity and compassion. We're excited to have Jade with us today to discuss growth mindset, personal development, and his transformative program, Next Level Human. Welcome to the show, Jade.
Hey, Sharlee, thanks so much for having me. It's great to be here. Looking forward to this conversation.
Absolutely, absolutely. So your work, both in and outside of the scope of your medical practice, is one that is not often seen. I haven't really seen a combination of hormonal discussions, metabolism, physical growth, personal development. So what inspired your work in personal development and the creation of Next Level Human?
Yeah, well, it really comes out of this idea that if you think about what transformation is and people who are trying to change and transform either psychologically or physically, what they normally think about is they think about, I need to change my habits. I need to change my behaviors. I need to have willpower. I got to have motivation. And this is what the whole industry, in my opinion, focuses on. And it's exactly the wrong thing to focus on. And I came to that conclusion over a very long period of time of doing this work and seeing that this stuff was not making a dent for the vast majority. And so if that is true, what I then discovered was there's something that comes before habits and behaviors, something that habits and behaviors flow out of, and that something is identity and beliefs. In other words, if you don't change your identity and your belief structure, habits and behaviors will never change for long. And this is why people continue to try habits and behaviors, continue to try to be motivated, and they constantly fail with willpower because they don't realize that it's their beliefs and their identity structure that really determine what they're going to do, how they're going to think, feel, choose, and act in the world. And so once I understood that, then I realized that to get people transformation in physical, psychological, whether it's relationships, whether it's health and fitness, whether it's finance, we got to work on identity. And one of the things about that, Sharlee, is that, as you know, I know, probably all the listeners know, most people adamantly defend their old identity. They do not want to change their identity. And in reality, what they should be doing is dismantling their old identity rather than defending it. And so from my perspective, this is why personal development has become the most important thing that I do. And that was a bit of a surprise to me, to be honest with you. But that is where the results come. Change your identity, the habits and behaviors follow.
Got you. And I will dig deeper into restructuring one's identity. But now I'm curious. So, what is next level human? Who
Yeah.
can become this? Is there a certain person that can become a next level human? Somebody that can't? Can we talk about that?
Yeah, well, it's really a beautiful concept because everyone absolutely can be a next level human. And it starts with just realizing that you, Charlie, the listener, me, each of us are unique. And so there has never been another person like us on the face of the earth since the dawn of man, nor will there ever be again. And this humble recognition of that being the case is the first step in becoming a next level human. The next step is to realize that, okay, well, if I'm unique and I am authentic, not to my past self or current self, but to my next best self,
Mm.
if I can become my best potential, I can do something unique for the world that no one else can do in the way that they can do it. And taking on that job is what I define as a next level human, to humbly understand that I am immensely powerful, that I have unique gifts that I bring, and that I can do something in a unique way that no one else can. And I desire to do that without the need for acknowledgement, reciprocation, and reward. And that, from my perspective, is a game that everyone can play. And if you understand that definition really quickly, you'll start to understand that what most of us do is we play the game of the culture, what the culture dictates: prom, marriage, kids, get a good
Mhm.
job, do this or that. It's all about what culture says. And this is why I think a lot of people struggle, because they're kind of trying to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak. But as soon as you start playing the next level human game instead of the culture level human game, you begin to find fulfillment. You begin to understand there's a game that's unique to you that you should be playing. And that makes all the difference.
Got you. So, I mean, it sounds like a lot of this takes a certain level of self awareness, maybe even self acceptance. So, how does one start there, or do you even need those things?
Yeah, I think that ultimately you do need self awareness. And it really starts with this idea before you can think differently, right? Because we've heard, law of attraction, just think differently. Or
Right.
we've gone to these seminars, oh, just make yourself feel different. You
Mhm.
act different. But before you can think, feel, or act different, you need to see the world differently. And this is what that's about. And so this is why perception is the major superpower of a next level human: the ability to see the world differently than the way you've been seeing it. And by the way, it's pretty easy, Charlie, because life has a way of forcing us to see different. Our repeated patterns, our recurrent struggles, stuck emotions, these
Mhm.
trials and tribulations we get into again and again and again. This, to me, is the way the world primes us and taps us on the shoulder and says, hey, Charlie, hey, Jade, you need to pay attention and look at this differently. This keeps happening this way because you keep doing things the exact same way. And so self awareness comes from the acknowledgement that if you have repeated patterns, recurrent obstacles, stuck emotions in your life that recur again and again and again and again, that's your signal that you need to be doing things differently and you need to be seeing the world differently. And oftentimes, by the way, we all know what this is like, right? If you don't stop and hear the whisper or the tap on the shoulder, pretty soon life's going to kick you in the stomach. Life has a way of making us pay attention. And so, unfortunately, we would all like to do this work before that happens. But most of the people who do the next level human work are people who have been through some difficult times. Life has shown them that if they're going to make change and transform, they're going to have to see things differently and become authentic to who they really are, not what culture says they must be. And that is the beginning of the journey. So you're absolutely right that self awareness is key. And life has a way of prompting us to pay attention. Repeated patterns, recurrent obstacles, stuck emotions do that.
Absolutely. So then would you say that it takes a mindset change to accomplish this?
It really does. And actually, there's two types of mindset that we talk about in the research a lot, right? There's
Mhm.
this idea of a fixed mindset, and this would
Mhm.
be someone who adamantly defends their identity and does not want to change. And then there's the idea of the growth mindset, which is someone who is looking to dismantle their old identity to up level. And so we can learn, by the way, because some people might say, well, Jade, what do I do? Because I feel like I'm a fixed mindset. Is this genetic? Is it just stuck? Am I going to be this way forever? Actually not. You can learn to be in a growth mindset. And that is one of the first steps to making the change, is to realize that your pain, your trials, your suffering, your tribulations, your struggles, all of those things have lessons embedded in them. And perhaps, just perhaps, that's the whole point for these things in the first place, to help
Right.
us spot where we're struggling so that we can learn the lessons and get better. All we have to do is start to look and start to think about all these things that are happening to us that we blame and complain about, or distract and deny, or whimper and whine about, that they
Mhm.
actually have embedded with them a unique opportunity to learn. So they're not frustrations in a sense,
Mhm.
they're initiations for us to realize our next level human self. And once you make that shift, just that one little mindset shift that we just talked about right now, I just
Right.
said something that for some of you adjusted the way you're seeing the world. And as soon as you make that tiny little adjustment, you are now moving into a growth mindset. And it happens that fast. It can happen from watching a TV show, it can happen
Mhm.
from reading a book, it can happen with a conversation with a friend. This is one of the reasons why I know I love podcasting, and you probably do too, Sharlee, that
Yep.
it literally can happen in a podcast just like that, where someone goes, oh my gosh, I just had this slight insight shift. And now I'm seeing things differently. And that puts me in the growth mindset. So it's as simple as this. It just happened for some of you listening to this right now.
Mhm.
It's that simple.
Well, you say it is simple, but I know that some of us, listeners, myself included, have these beliefs that we limit ourselves, or maybe we can't make these changes, or
Mhm.
change is hard. I don't know if I can really do this. Can you share some strategies and techniques for really identifying and then removing limiting barriers or beliefs?
Yeah, absolutely. And look, here's the thing. I completely empathize because we're all human, right? And so as humans, we tend to want stability and safety and comfort, right? And so we do default back to our old ways of thinking. And so the way to think about this is, it's not that you're going to replace an old belief with a brand new belief, right? And the old belief goes away. What it is that your old belief now has a new belief sitting right next to it. And now you have to sort of live your way and choose the new belief day after day, so that the old belief sort of recedes in the background. So it is a process. So the first step of that process is seeing things differently. The next step of that process is really choosing the new belief. But let me just explain briefly how this happens so people can understand. I'll give you some examples from my own life. What we know from the research and from looking at people who in child development, adolescent development, and young adulthood is that during these times we go through struggles, we go through difficulties, we go through trials and tribulations. Some of us go through capital T traumas. And these struggles and trials and tribulations and traumas cause us to create stories about the world. We make decisions about what the world means based on what happened to us when we were young. These are misguided and unconscious decisions. Notice the acronym there, MUD. We get stuck in the mud with these misguided, unconscious decisions. They're misguided is because when they happen to us as children or adolescents, we don't have the knowledge, the know how, the maturity, the wisdom, or the tools to make the right decisions about what happened. So instead, we go, the world's not safe, or I'm not good enough, or I don't belong. And we basically have these belief structures that are really stories that we told ourselves that kept us stuck in the mud. Now, one of the first steps is to go back and go, what is it about my life and these repeated patterns and recurrent obstacles and stuck emotions that point me back to a situation that I went through that caused me to have an issue around safety and security, or acceptance and belonging, or freedom and authenticity. For example, and it could be very simple. I'll give you an example from my life. I had a very loving family, very loving mother, very loving father, but my mother was volatile emotionally. She had some childhood trauma. She was a young mom. She had 4 kids by the time she was 26. I was the youngest. She would have emotional outbursts. One day I would run through the house with mud dripping down my legs, mud all over the floor. She'd have no problem. The next day, she'd scream and yell at me because my socks were on the ground. Now, I had a good childhood. I wouldn't say I'd suffered any trauma, but that unpredictability in the emotional volatility of my mom caused me to write a decision, create a misguided unconscious decision about trustworthiness of women. It also made me a people pleaser. So now imagine as an adult, now I don't trust female emotions and I'm a people pleaser. So I'll tell you everything you want to think and ask for nothing for myself. And this followed me around as dysfunctional romantic relationships throughout my entire 20s and 30s until my marriage blew up. I had an affair. Life kicked me in the stomach, right? Because of this misguided unconscious decision. And then I finally woke up. And luckily that I did. I saw what I was doing and I had to rewrite this misguided unconscious decision. So it happens just like this. I didn't have trauma, so to speak, but I did make a decision that I was not aware of that followed me around. And you know, Sharlee, Carl Jung has an amazing quote for this. What he says is, he says, if you do not make the unconscious conscious, it will follow you around and you will call it fate. And that's what happens to us. So to answer your question, how do we begin? We begin by spotting these stories and beginning to rewrite these stories. And there are easy techniques, by the way, that you can do that help you do this. One of them is called written exposure therapy, which is essentially writing about the things that happened to you when you were a kid, then writing about the decision, what you told yourself that meant about the world. And then in the third part, rewriting the script and saying, I did not understand that at that time, but now from my more wisdom, older, more mature self, I'm going to make it mean this. And that's the idea of putting the new belief right next to the old belief. And then you move forward, choosing that new belief, and this old belief recedes into the background. And that is the first step. That's how you begin thinking differently. And that's when the patterns and the obstacles and the stuck emotions begin to turn into synchronicities and opportunities and serendipities instead of repeated patterns, recurrent obstacles, and stuck emotions. That's how you know you're on the right path.
Got you. So, I mean, it really sounds like to be a next level human, you've got to really restructure your entire identity. Like, what does that look like? Tell me about that.
Well, it sounds difficult to do, right? But actually, if we think about it, think about this. We do this all the time, whether we're conscious of it or not. How many of us are still the same identity that we were when we were 18 years old, right? We're very different. So we do change and we change all the time. All I'm saying is we need to get conscious about the change. So that's basically what it is. So think, in the self-development world, you probably heard this, Sharlee, and I'm sure the listeners have heard this, be authentic. Be authentic to yourself, Jade. Be authentic to yourself, Sharlee. Well, here's the problem with that. We do not want to be authentic to a past self. And we actually do not want to be authentic to our current self, because if we are, that's essentially saying, I'm going to just stay right here. I don't want to grow. What we want to be is authentic to our next level human selves, our future better selves. And so that actually is the next step to this. Yes, you spot the patterns, and then you go, I am going to restructure my identity by rewriting the stories, by changing these misguided unconscious decisions and make them conscious choices now. And that is all about who I want to be moving forward. And so then I began to live as this new person. So for me, with my people-pleasing self, distrustful self, I had to work on honesty and more honesty. And in fact, I had to develop a new honor code, which basically my old honor code was kindness is better than honesty. And now my honor code, after rewriting my identity, is that honesty is kinder than kindness. And this is the kind of shift that we need to be able to make. And so notice the wording there. My wording changed because my thoughts changed and my feelings changed. And once my thoughts changed and my feelings changed, my choices and my actions changed. But that's kind of what it is like. And you'll even see this in yourselves if you look back and you go, what was the wording and possibility speak that I was using in my 20s or my teens, and see how things are different. You'll hear this all the time in your speak, right? I'm not good at this. I'm like this. I don't do that. All of these things are pointing us to where we are stuck and defending our old identities. So actually, it's pretty simple to go back and say, wait, let me question that, because that's not a statement, that's a story. Here's the next statement. No, it's not a statement, it's a story. And you begin questioning all of these stories and rewriting them. And this is how the process works. Now, I'll say one more thing here, because in this realm, a lot of people talk about law of attraction and stuff like that. Think your way into change. This will work, but it's more powerful to act your way into change. And we have research that tells us this, the as if principles, the idea of be it until you see it, not fake it till you make it. Faking is pretending, right? Faking means that when you're watching me, Sharlee, I'm going to do the thing. And when you're not watching me, I'm going to go right back to being old Jade. Being means I am in alignment in thinking, feeling, choosing, and acting. So I don't want to fake it till I make it. I want to be it till I see it. And I can go out into the world and I can take little actions that let my brain see me living the new story. And as I do that, my brain becomes convinced that I am this new human. And then I live my way into this new next level human self.
We'll be right back after word from our sponsor.
Continuing education is both a requirement and a learning opportunity, but finding the right CE provider can be challenging. AATBS, a triad company, offers continuing education for psychologists, social workers, marriage and family therapists, counselors, and behavior analysts. CE courses are available both individually and as part of our new All Access Pass. All Access Pass provides a library of over 250 unique courses. That's more than 800 hours of CEs, with new courses being added every month. As a special offer, Behavioral Health Today listeners can save 15% on CE purchases. Visit us at aatbs.com/BHT and enter promo code BHT15 during checkout. That's aatbs.com/BHT. Check out our library and check off your CE requirements today.
Okay. And so, I mean, it really sounds like there is a set process and a program almost. So living this life of happiness, success, meaning, of course, that is a goal for many, many people, myself included. How do you approach helping people get there and really cultivating those qualities? What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is, and this is going to probably upset a lot of people, but just hear me out on this before you throw your computer or your mobile device across the room. Happiness is not what we want as humans. It's not that happiness is somehow wrong. It's that happiness is very fleeting. It's context dependent. What we really want is fulfillment. Okay. Now, happiness is tied to things like passion and meaning, right? Passions are things that are fun. They're exciting. They teach us some things. They bring enjoyment to life. Meaning are things like our parents, our dog, our kids, our work, right? So you want things that are passionate and meaningful, and they can bring happiness and contentment, but they are fleeting and they come from the outside world. For example, if someone passes away that you love, there's no way you can be happy and content. However, if you have purpose, if you are living your purpose, you will have fulfillment. And that is very different than meaning and happiness. Fulfillment is, to me, the quintessential emotional state of a human. What it says is, I am somebody who has something unique to offer, and I will do so simply because I can. And because I do that, there's a level of achievement in that. And that means that it's something that I generate within myself that flows from me to the outside world. Happiness is different, right? We need the world to look a particular way so that we feel happy. However, if we are fulfilled by choosing to play our own next level human game, that is something that flows from us, created within us, to the outside world. And so this is the game that we play. And so if you're following along in this discussion, the whole reason for personal transformation, the whole reason to become a next level human is exactly what we're talking about here, so that you can achieve fulfillment and joy. And that comes from living an authentic purpose. Yes, passions matter and contentment is great. Yes, meaning is beautiful and we need it, and happiness is important. But the quintessential aspect that we all want is fulfillment. What I think, Sharlee, is on our deathbeds, what we want to do is we want to be proud of the life we lived. We don't want to be happy about certain things in our lives, even if we weren't happy, right? And it was a brutal life and we had a lot of difficulties. If we are proud of how we showed up and how we mattered and made a difference, we are going to be fulfilled on our deathbed. We will have lived our purpose. And my contention is that's what every human ultimately wants.
Got you. And so, along the same lines, some people may argue that that's not possible
Mm.
for everyone. Not every person is able to get to that place of fulfillment.
Mm.
How do you counter this belief and demonstrate that these qualities are attainable
Yeah.
for
Well, it's
anybody?
another misguided unconscious decision, isn't it? Because what we've
Yep.
been told by culture is we've been told you need to write a book, or you need to do a podcast, or you need to have this great job, or you need to have a fancy house. This is what we think fulfillment is. But purpose is actually just the humble recognition that I have something unique to offer people in the places that I am. Like right now, I live in Asheville, North Carolina. It's April 2024, right? And I have a set of skills that allow me to operate in this place. So when I go to the coffee shop, when I go to Whole Foods, when I go to the gym, when I'm on the hiking trail, when I'm interacting with people in this space and place, I bring my purpose to that. That is really what it is. My intention is to bring a positive example, bring charged energetics, and be an experience and an example for the world. I don't need to have written a book and started a business and made a bunch of money for me to uh, live a fulfilled life. I just need to decide how I'm going to make a difference in the spaces and places that I show up in, and how I'm going to set an example and create an experience for the people who happen to come into my life. This is where we get this wrong, because we think it's got to be this grandiose thing, and that's a culture level lie. It's the culture telling us that that's the case, when in reality, all we need to do is decide and go out and be our next level human selves. And as we start to do that, the world actually that we see begins to change around us, right? So it's this idea that once you decide to be different, the world starts to show up different. Once you start dismantling your old identity, the world will begin to change the way it shows up. And all of a sudden, you will begin to feel fulfilled right now. Fulfillment doesn't mean I have to work for 20 years and it's not possible. I can feel fulfilled right now by simply walking down to the coffee shop and going, I'm going to walk in there with a particular way of being that's going to amplify the vibration in the room. And by the way, this might sound like new age woo, but we actually have science to show us this is the case. If you look at research coming out of the Heart Math Institute, we now know that when we focus on our heart and when we have compassion and love for our fellow humans, we actually have an electromagnetic field coming off the heart that expands 3 to 6 feet. And we also know that that electromagnetic field coming off the heart impacts other people. This isn't about me talking to you. This isn't about me looking at you. It's about me coming in with a particular way of being into the room, and I can affect your emotional state. We know what this is like when someone angry comes into the room or someone
Mhm.
agitated comes into the room. They don't have to talk to us at all. We can feel that vibration of like something's wrong here, can't we?
Yep.
However, the opposite also works, and we don't realize that. And we don't realize we can bring that energetic into the room. This is the beginning of fulfillment. So, yes, people think it's hard because they think and don't understand how powerful they are to influence the energetics around them. They haven't tasted it yet. But I challenge all you listeners to begin to do that intentionally. And those of you who already do this, you're over there nodding your head because it will become so apparent to you when I say this that you'll be like, yes, I've done this, I've experienced this, and I also have friends and family who I know are these kinds of people. And so it's really this simple for us humans. We just don't want to believe it because we've got misguided, unconscious decisions that have told us differently.
Right. And so Jade, I'm with you. I completely agree with the things that you're saying, but how do we do this? Like, how do we become a next level human? Is there a certain way to do it? Do you teach us how? Like, how do we know?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you the shortcut that again is going to make people raise their eyebrows at me, but the shortcut is this. Think about your most difficult struggles in your life, right? Now,
Mhm.
these will be the struggles that are now scars, not open wounds, but they're scars. They were difficult. You still feel them. You still reminded, and if you poked a scar, you could feel it a little bit. Like I have a scar in my hand from a bar fight when I used to be a bouncer back in the day, and I can still feel that pain, that scar. And it's a reminder to me that I'm not a fighter and I don't want to be a fighter anymore. The fastest way is to take your pain, Look for other people who are experiencing similar pain and teach them the same lessons you taught. From my perspective, we are here for 3 reasons and 3 reasons only as humans. We are here to learn, we are here to teach, and we are here to love. Love being synonymous with create for other people. So our struggles and our pain, which we tend to want to avoid and not talk about, are the places where we learn our most important lessons. And then what we do is we go and find, and by the way, they will usually find us. People who have struggled through the same thing will seem to make their way into our lives. And then we can share our stories with them. And this is the beginning of this. And then, of course, some of us will go on to create businesses or write books or podcasts or whatever that go one step further. But this is the cheat code. The fastest way to become a next level human, to get fulfilled, is simply to go out and tell the authentic story of your struggle and the lessons that you've learned. And by the way, I know we all have a love-hate relationship with social media, but one of the things social media does for all of us is give us an amazingly wonderful place to tell our authentic story of struggle. And forget this misguided unconscious decision about it's got to be a bunch of likes and a bunch of follows and this and that. I think we all say as good humans that if we can tell our story and teach our lessons, and one person who's watching us in our physical reality or the social media reality changes and learns something as a result, I know that most any human would say, I would want to tell that story if they could not suffer in the same way. This is how it's done. It's very simply a result of your pain and your suffering. Pain becomes a path to purpose. Suffering becomes a source to meaning. Your hurt becomes a way that you can help. And this is the way you integrate and transform pain into purpose.
Right. So then how can you then, Jade, support individuals as they embrace that level of change, taking courageous steps? Because I mean, it's simple, but then at the same time, that's a difficult thing to do, to
Yeah.
open yourself up to that level of maybe even scrutiny, or opening up these wounds that you have, or scars even, that are really painful. So
Yes.
how can one be supported through that?
Well, the first thing I'll say is we must remember that, I use the term simple, right? Nothing truly is simple or easy in the beginning. And that's
Mhm.
because easy is earned, right? We tend to forget that anything that is easy for you now was something that you earned along the way. So easy is something that you earn. That's the first thing to understand. However, there is a 3-step process I'm going to walk you through briefly right now for how this is done. The first step to this is questioning and rewriting the old narratives. Spot them, spot the patterns, see the old ways that you see the world, the things you tell yourself and about the world, and begin to restructure those. That's the changing of the thinking. Step 2 is to teach yourself a new feeling. And that happens with meditation, not the mindfulness meditation that most people think about, but meditation that allows you to get into a feeling visualization state. If you ever seen Happy Gilmore or a movie like that, where you go to your Happy Gilmore happy place, this is the kind of meditation that we're talking about. It's a form of daydreaming, but not about things that are not realistic. It's about daydreaming, you living this authentic life, telling your story of struggle, and feeling the sense of fulfillment, compassion, and love within you, and practicing that every day so your nervous system begins to believe that it's real. So now we've got your thoughts taken care of by writing and journaling. We've got your feelings taken care of by this Happy Gilmore happy place. And then now the next step is act as if. You go out into the world and you act. Now, here's how to think about this. There's 2 types of actors we all know if we watch film or shows, right? There's the first kind of actor that when they get the role, they go in, they memorize their line, and when the director says action, they play the part. And when the director says cut, they stop playing the part. That's not the kind of action we want. What we want is the method actor. We decide we're going to play a role. We research that role. We discover everything we can, every nuance, all the ways that that person would be, and then we start playing that role. And when the director says action, we're just playing the role. So we don't have to do anything. And when the director says cut, we keep playing the role. And so that's the next thing. You wake up and you say, what role am I putting on today? Like a dress rehearsal. What thoughts am I going to dress in? This old shirt, this tattered shirt that I've been wearing, I'm throwing that out. I'm putting on a new thought. I'm putting on a new feeling. I'm putting on a new action. And that's how you begin to do this. Written exposure therapy, journaling to change the story, feeling-based meditation to practice in your nervous system the new feeling of this new story, and then going out like a method actor and living this new way of bringing your experience and your example to the world. And yes, does it take some time? Sure. Is it hard for some people in the beginning? Yes, but easy is earned, and you've been doing things the way you've been doing them already and getting the same results. At least now you don't have to read the latest habit book and then go, let me try this now. You have this process that you can work. And a process is much different than a plan, right? A plan is more like a recipe, like make this cake this way. A process teaches you how to make any cake, right? And it allows you to be authentic within it. And so this is the process of change. And if you need help with this, there are many places that you can get help with this.
So, as we or people that are in the process or would want to be in the process of making these changes, do we tell people that we're making the change? Do we just allow them to see us as this new person or with these new beliefs that we have? How do we handle when a person has or a relationship is built on one way and we want to change things? How does that work?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. We all know what's going to happen, right? Like when we tell somebody, I'm different now,
Mhm.
no one's going to believe us and no one's going to care. And this is one of the hardest things, again, about culture level, right? So, from my perspective, what you do is it's gamification of this. I like to tell people don't tell anyone what you're doing. Simply begin to change the process and play a different role and watch what happens. Some people will appear different to you. Some people will appear like, wow, I don't know about them in my life anymore. Other people will come into your life. It's almost like you're a water wheel that starts spinning faster and faster and faster, and you create a repelling and magnetic force, and you start to repel all the things and people and places that don't correspond with this new way of being, and you start to attract all the places and ways of being and people who are in alignment with this. And so from my perspective, it's the best way to actually vet the people in your life. We all know, and this has been bared out in research as well, that we can essentially say who you are is a consequence of the environment that you live in, the people you expose yourself to, the media you consume, and all of that. And that's why as you embark on this in your next level human self, you got to go, what kind of media does my next level human self consume? What kind of people does my next level human self interact with? What kind of places does my next level human self go? If I'm playing this role, maybe I go, my next level human self hangs out at gyms and goes hiking and goes and writes at coffee shops, and versus my old self maybe who stayed at home on the couch or hung out in breweries or whatever. We know that, especially when you look at the addiction research, we also know that this is the case, that one of the core things that someone who's addicted needs to do is needs to get in a different environment, needs to get around different people, needs to go different places. By the way, just because we're not maybe addicted to drugs and alcohol and sex and all the rest, we are addicted. We are addicted to our old ways of being. We are addicted to our old identity. And so if you look at it from that perspective, you start to go, I need to play this method actor role and take it very seriously, right? You can't play the fit, healthy, next level human you when you are hanging out in bars, eating fast food, and sitting on the couch all day. That is inconsistent with the method actor that is the fit, healthy version. And this is what we must understand.
So, can you share with us a hallmark story of someone who has restructured their identity and has been able to lead to positive changes? So, what did success look like? How was that process for them?
Yeah, and I think this is one of my favorite stories. It's actually one of the earliest stories of my career. This is not his actual name, but let's call him Dale. And Dale was a long haul truck driver. Now, my initial background is as a naturopathic doctor. So I'm an alternative practitioner. I do lifestyle medicine. And so he came to me and his wife sent him to me. And immediately he sits down, and Dale's a good old boy. He spends all his time driving in his truck. And he tells me right off the bat, I don't believe in all this woo woo, new age, health, fitness nonsense. I'm here because my wife sent me here. So right away, what we need to understand, and he illustrates a lot of this, I could not tell Dale, all right, I want you to all of a sudden go and get, wild caught salmon and organic kale. And I want you to pack your lunch and all of that. He ate where his truck stopped. He ate at ExxonMobil stations, greasy spoons. He was sitting all day long. So basically, I needed to help him change his identity, but I couldn't take him from a sedentary truck driver to a cross-fitting paleo person overnight. That's not going to work. So what I did say is I said, okay, by the way, he was about 30 pounds overweight, diabetic, on metformin. So what I said is okay, look, let's begin to look at how about you move to diet sodas instead of regular sodas? How about you change the chips for nuts? How about you do Slim Jims and beef jerky? How about you start to strip buns off your burgers? Now, he looked at me like he was crazy, but I heard the words that I wanted to hear where he said, I can do that. That's weird, but I can do that. Now, by the way, mind you, for those listening, at this time in my career, to me, this was like substituting one poison, regular Coke, for another poison, Diet Coke, in my mind at that time, right? I'm thinking, this guy's not going to get any results. I'm just switching him from, one poison to the next. Anyway, I never thought I'd see the guy again. He comes back 3 months later. You all can guess what happened, right? He lost about 30 pounds. He came off his metformin. The physician he was working with took him off. He was no longer diabetic. And what was really interesting about this is that at that point in time, the funny thing about that, by the way, he goes, yeah, my other physician asked me what I was doing, and I told him I was on the Slim Jim diet because I told him to eat nothing but Slim Jim and beef jerkies and things like that. So I sometimes laugh at, oh my God, this doctor thought I put this guy on the Slim Jim diet. But what actually happened is his identity became restructured because he started to, and I didn't have the wording to explain this at the time, but he started to see himself as a healthier individual, taking actions in alignment with someone who was no longer diabetic. And by the way, in case anyone's wondering how this works, for diabetics, it's really sugars and carbs that are going to be the issue. So basically what I said is keep eating everything you're eating, just do the fat and the protein. Now, what's beautiful about this story is guess what he said then? What else? What else can I do? And then I moved him one extra step towards wild-caught salmon and organic kale. I started to have him get, every time he stopped his truck, he used to be an old school football player. I told him, when you stop your truck, just do a minute of push-ups or a minute of sit-ups or a minute of squats, just whenever you stop your truck, whenever you stop to pee, whenever and so that's what he started to do. Lost another 10 to 15 pounds. And slowly but surely, he began to see his identity shift. This is actually the way it happens. And by the way, it can happen a lot faster than that, because I've also had clients and patients who, God forbid Dale didn't have this, but have massive heart attacks or divorces or lose their jobs. And they can make massive changes in a very short period of time. Anyone who's ever been on the breakup diet and saw their whole life transform and lost weight, and we all know what that's like, right? That was you having a forced identity change. You don't have to wait for something dramatic or traumatic to happen. All you have to do is begin to plan it. You've done it in your life before. Trust me, you have. And those same principles work. All we're doing is calling those principles out. You had to force your thought process to change when that person broke up with you. You had to force your thought process to change when you went bankrupt. You had to force it. Now what we're doing is we're planning it instead of having it forced on us, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And I really appreciate in that story that you taught us that it's not today I'm something and tomorrow I can just be something completely different. Like it's not, or it doesn't have to be like an instant change. It can take time, because I know for some people thinking about changing that it has to be an instant. Like today I can be something and the next minute I need to be something else for it to be a lasting change. So I really appreciate that it can be a process.
Yeah, and actually, let me say to that, I agree and I disagree with that, and here's how I look at it. Yes, it's going to take time, but what we need to understand is that you can shift into this thinking, feeling, choosing, acting state at any time. So again, another misguided unconscious decision about culture is that if my body doesn't yet look the part, then I'm not the part. That's a story you need to change, right? If you are actually getting up and going to the gym, you played that method actor role. And it's not if, it's when, right? And the reason I bring it up that way is because the doubt that this is going to take forever and the idea that you have to sustain this oftentimes is the misguided unconscious decision that keeps people from starting. Instead, if you realize that actually I'm being the thing right now, and as a result of being this, it's not, if, it's when. Because I think a lot of people, the misguided unconscious decisions of that we hold in our psyche is that it's an if. It's not going to happen, right? And what I'm saying is, no, it's not an if. It's a when, as long as you are being. So you can be starting right now. And if you sustain that being, you will 1000% without doubt see the change. And so from in a very real roundabout sort of crazy way, it really does come down to your thinking, your feeling, your choosing, and your acting. If you can sustain that being, you are it. You will see it for sure, 100% without a doubt.
Thank you for that mindset change just that quickly for me. Thank you. So unfortunately, we do have to wrap up, but can you give us some final words of encouragement or maybe even some advice to listeners who are embarking on their own journey of personal growth and transformation?
To me, it's a very simple thing, right? It basically comes down to this. The number one thing to be is authentic to who you are meant to be. Not your past self, not your current self, but the future next level human you. And part of the reason you doubt that you can change, and part of the reason transformation is so hard for you is because of these stories that you're telling yourself about the culture. Not even your stories, by the way. These stories were written for you about what is possible. If you remain authentic and play your game, you will begin to see the shift in your thinking and feeling right now. And that will begin to push you into a place where you will inevitably, without doubt, see the physical, mental, and emotional transformations, feel what fulfillment feels like, understand what being your authentic self is. That's the only thing you need to focus on, not the culture level doubts, not the old beliefs, not the past patterns of it's never worked before. All of those things need to change.
Absolutely. Well, Jade, I have truly enjoyed our conversation and I want more. So I feel like my listeners want more as well. So where can they learn more? Where can we get more information about you, your next level courses? Where can we find more?
So the best place to go is nextlevelhuman.com. And that's also my podcast as well, the Next Level Human podcast. So at nextlevelhuman.com, there's several resources there for you to get involved with this transformation technology. And also you can check me out. I'm at Jade Teta on all the social media handles. And Sharlee, thanks so much for your work. I really appreciate you having me. It's makes a big difference for people, and I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dave, for being here. I really have appreciated speaking with you today. And thank you to our listeners for taking the time to join us. The resources for this episode and an archive of all of our other episodes can be found on our webpage at triadhq.com/BHT. And we look forward to having you back with us next time on Behavioral Health Today.
We appreciate all the support from our community, and if you like our show, one of the best ways you can support it is by giving us a 5-star rating and leaving a review. Behavioral Health Today is a podcast part of the Triad Behavioral Health Network, all rights reserved.